Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guest today is someone I've been wanting for quite a while, Marcos Moura. Marcos is a co-owner and chief development officer at Amada Franchise Inc., a brand dedicated to enriching the lives of our rapidly aging population. Marcos has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs find and start businesses that allow them to live life on their terms and do work that is meaningful to them, their families, and their communities. He holds an MBA from the University of Southern California, woohoo, USC, and works and lives in San Clemente, California with his wife and three adorable boys. Welcome to the show, Marcos. I'm so glad you could carve out time for us, especially on such quick notice. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to have you here. And we just want to dive right in. Tell us about where this amazing entrepreneurial background came from.
I think it came from I was never very good in corporate America. It was just not a good fit. I was not a good student. I was expelled from two schools growing up. Like crazy ADHD, and probably a little bit of Tourette's too, where just impulsive, right? And so corporate America was terrible. Oh yeah, it was awful because I had a hard time with bosses, and so in 2000, I think it was right around 2002 or something, is when I quit my job from Countrywide Home Loans and started a mortgage brokerage with a business partner. His name is U Lee, Korean guy, one of the best business partners I ever had in my life. It was one of those guys that, like, partnerships are tough, but when partnerships are where you have 100% trust in each other and confidence in each other, it was awesome. He's such a good man. And so we started that company, and ever since then, I've had some ownership, even if it was minor, in everything I've done. So yeah, I think it was just necessity. I don't know if I could survive in corporate America.
It's so funny. I'm with you, Marcos. I couldn't stay in corporate America either. And ironically, this whole ADHD and not good as a student and is a typical entrepreneur, right? Those are attributes that are very common that we tend to have. So you find a different niche, which is towards the innovation and the entrepreneurship. But I didn't realize about these partnership. I knew about your partnership with Amada, but I didn't realize about these other partnerships. And you're right. This idea of partnership, when it works, it's beautiful. When it doesn't, it doesn't. So
Yeah.
Can you expound on that just a little bit for me? Because many prospective franchisees are considering partnerships. How do you do it right? How do you find that person that, like you said, you can completely trust, has your back, and you can build something with?
I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot, right? Because even if you know somebody really well, you don't know that person in a business sense. You don't know what they're gonna be like when there's not enough money to make payroll, and you have to go find money and figure out how to do it. And so I think it's difficult. So I think you have to have some gut instincts about who this person is. But then what I've learned is before you get into a true partnership, I think you just got to write everything down. You got to have a good agreement between each other of how are things going to be dealt with, who owns what, and not just do a verbal thing. So I think what I found is when you start a partnership with somebody, they have an idea of what happened and you have an idea of what happened, and you're both right, because you interpreted things in different ways. And a year down the road or 5 years down the road, when you go to discuss that thing, like who owns what, right? What percentage do you own? What percentage do I own? And you have a disagreement. that then becomes the battle. And you think that person is evil and they think you're evil. And the truth is you're not. Neither of you are bad people. You just understood the relationship differently. So as much as you can detail in the beginning about, again, who owns what, who is going to do what, who invested what, the responsibilities, I think you can avoid a lot of those issues. Because even if you do all that, you're still going to fight with each other. You're still going to have disagreements, even if you do everything perfectly. And so you gotta choose your partners very carefully.
Yeah.
I think you just described marriage in America. Like everything.
I can't hear you guys anymore.
You can't hear us?
And I don't know why.
Rebecca, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you fine, Marcos.
Yeah. I was saying, I think he just described marriage in America.
I think so too.
I mean, everything he
partnerships.
said, I translated in my head, oh, that can be in a marriage. That can be in a marriage, like not having a clear agreement right at the outset or having certain expectations.
Yeah.
Can you hear us
agreed.
now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Woo.
So we were saying that you were like kind of basically describing marriage in America too. Like people go into these situations, whether, any kind of partnership, business or, relationship with a certain type of expectation, but yet everybody's wearing their own rosy colored goggles. And then when, something goes sideways, that's when all of a sudden you see who this person is. So that compatibility is so important from the outset. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also can't be too tough on partnerships. The other thing I've noticed is that when things are difficult, there's no money, you're working big hours, people can be crummy to each other. Right. I mean, I've got partners that I love to death today that I wanted to strangle, 10 years ago. And but look at what was going on, right? I mean, none of us are going to be angels when things are just falling apart. And so there's some forgiveness there, which is the same thing with marriage, right? There's some forgiveness there that needs to exist with partnerships and understanding that those are just tough times. And if you just like marriage, if you can get through those tough times, then there's a love that develops and an admiration that develops for each other. So there's that too. Business partners that can't forgive and can't move forward. There's certain things you can't, right? There's certain things that a partner will do that you just got to be done. But there's others that sometimes you get offended by something that you just gotta, get over it, get over yourself, right? And move on. And then when things are wonderful, everybody's hugging each other and kissing each other, and you're so happy and so excited because things are good, right? It's great to be you can be a great leader when there's lots of money coming in, right? It's hard to be that person when things are rough.
So, Marcos, I've watched you now for 10, 12 years, and it's been fast. Actually, longer than that now I think about it.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And there's a lot of passion in you, and some very strong beliefs about not just your own business partners, but partners that you would select for Amada. So talk a little bit about the importance of proper selection, let's call that, or doing it right in your mind.
Well, I think so. When I was growing up, my dad we moved from Brazil to the United States in 1991. And in order for my dad to stay in the country, he had to buy a business. He was like the E2 visa guy, right? And so my dad bought a Blimpie franchise. With some of you guys who may not have been around a while back, that was like a Subway. I don't even know. Are there still Blimpies out there?
I don't know, but I still remember them like it was yesterday. Yeah.
I think they're out there still, and I remember my dad found Blimpies at a franchise conference, like a MFV Expo, right? He went to the expo. It was in Minnesota, I think. He goes and he comes back and he's like, we're gonna buy a Blimpie. And I remember Mom saying, well, why don't we buy a Subway? And my dad is good. Blimpie is cheaper. It's like it's not as expensive as Subway. And my dad had this romantic notion of what it'd be to own a restaurant. Now think about my dad. My dad was a He was a MBA guy. He was a headhunter in Brazil, and he worked with large companies to find their next VP in Brazil. Like he would work with a large like GM in Brazil to find a VP of whatever in Brazil, right? And so he did really well in Brazil, and he was also a professor at a university at an MBA school in Sao Paulo. So this is a guy who's got a pretty good ego, somebody who's worked at a really high level, and now he goes and he buys a Blimpie. And looking back, I'm like, what, Dad, what were you thinking? And we tease him all the time. He's 82 now, and he's still a professor. And he says, I'm going to die in the classroom someday. I love teaching. And we're like, what were you thinking that he's like, I thought I would be able to hang out with my kids. I would make friends with customers. People would come in and I'd go, hey, Stu, I'm making your sandwich right now. Hey, Bob, and people would come in and go, hey, Ed, how are you? And it's like Cheers. He thought he was opening Cheers, And that was not what happened, and it was brutal. It physically, it almost killed my dad. It physically made him ill. We owned the store for, I think it was 4 or 5 years, and it was awful. It was just horrible. So having that experience, and it's funny that I'm in franchising, right? You'd think that I would have run for the hills. But what I also saw though is in the same town, and this is in Provo, Utah. In the same town, there's another Blimpie. And that dude loved what he did. He had been a Blimpie franchisee for like 20 years. He sponsored the high school soccer team or football team. His store was always busy. It was a gross, ugly place. His store was like super dirty, and he made a ton of money out of it, and he loved it. So why is it that you have this concept that two entrepreneurs in the same town, one of them goes to the hospital, the other one is like, I love this? Well, that's a problem, right? Starting a business is not for everybody, number one. I'm not sure if there was a business my dad would have enjoyed starting, but and then even if you are the right entrepreneur to start a business, not every business is one you should start.
That's a mouthful. I mean, because you're right. It's the same franchise concept. One person loved it. The other one, your father, who really is more wired as a professor or a teacher, had this romantic notion that it would be like a Cheers, and it wasn't, and it almost killed him, right? I mean, it just was very stressful for him and the family during this time when he just wasn't ideal for that scenario. And like you said, he may have not been ideal for any business. He's a professor, he's a teacher, and
right.
And at 82 is still doing what he is particularly good at. So talking about passion, talking about romanticizing, how have you as a franchisor, and what do you recommend other franchisors do that this doesn't happen? Or prospective franchisee looking for a business, how do you prevent getting romantic about a particular concept, getting excited about it? Because sometimes what we're attracted to is not necessarily what's good for us.
Yeah. So we in Amada Senior Care, so we're in about 160 locations throughout the country, and 90% of those locations are run by a very specific entrepreneur. Our entrepreneurs are former sales hunters from medical device and pharmaceutical sales. So these are guys and girls who spent 15, 20 years at Pfizer, Abbott, Stryker, Merck, companies like that. And I think we're probably fairly unique that way. I don't know of another franchise in our band, meaning, McDonald's, for example, from what I understand, they only sell McDonald's to current McDonald's franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least there's a lot of brands out there that say they're in food and they will not sell their franchise to somebody who doesn't have extensive food experience, right? But I think in our range of franchises, it's pretty uncommon that a franchisor really cares what the background of their franchisee is. Usually it's we want to make sure you have the money,
you're nice, and you have the money, right? Those are like the three criteria of who I'm looking for. You know, you ask a franchisor, who do you want to sell a franchise to? People who have money,
Right.
right? It's like, okay, well, what else, right? And they kind of can't really answer it. And so Amada was a company that, and this was kind of, by the way, and I can't take the credit for this. This is kind of forced on me by the guys that started Amada. They said, we don't want everybody. We want just this type of person. And I remember going to them and saying, well, you're crazy, because that's not how franchising works. You basically get the leads that you get and you sell the franchise to whoever buys it. And they said, well, then we're not doing it. Like, they literally said, then we just won't franchise. It's fine. We just won't do this. So, and it worked. We were able to really specialize our franchise development efforts to find that one specific entrepreneur, and it's paid off huge for us, because our support system, our training, how we talk to each other, our community, the family that our franchise is now, 160 locations, is very specific, right? It's sales hunters, and it's created a culture in itself. And I think that we a lot of times can be better than the competition because of this very specific entrepreneur that we have in our system.
That's so interesting. So this is an individual who has sales skills. They have an understanding of the healthcare landscape. What are some of the other criteria that you look for?
Well, they have to have the money.
Yes, there we go.
That was number 1 and 3.
So they do, but that's at least the gateway, right? Because what I know is, if you don't know how to sell, if going to a hospital where no one is expecting you to walk into that hospital and navigating through and getting 5 minutes of time with the head of case management of that hospital, that's a tough thing to do. You need to eat glass for breakfast, right? You need to be a tough mother scratcher, where you are going to do that. And if you get kicked out of the hospital, you're not going to go cry in your car. You're going to come back the next day and do it again. And so I know that. And so if somebody comes to me, like it happens all the time, we might have an entrepreneur that has lots of money, was a VP at IBM, I don't know.
Mhm.
And they come to us and they say, and they were an engineer, I don't know, engineer. And they say, I want to buy your franchise. And we'll just say no, right? It's just no, because this is going to be awful. You're going to hate this business. Because again, go back to my dad. That IBM VP engineer has a romantic notion of, I really want to give back. I want to help seniors. I want to provide jobs, and I want to do something meaningful. Great. Problem is, sir, is that you're going to have to spend Monday through Friday selling. You're going to have to walk into hospitals, skilled nursings. You're going to have to sell your butt off. And then when you meet with the family, you're going to have to sell again why you're better than visiting angels or right at home. And you're going to hate that, quite frankly, because you're not a salesperson. And so we're very brutally honest with our prospects and people who are looking, because I don't want to just sell your franchise and then you hate it because, my dad did that and almost killed him. But I think that I hope that a lot of franchisors do that, because the franchise fee that we gets spent very quickly. If you're a prospect and you're thinking about paying $55,000 or $60,000 or $40,000 to a franchisor, just know that that money is going to be spent right away. That's not what we live off of. We live off the royalties. And so you better have people who are going to perform well, or else you're going to be supporting a bunch of people who are not paying enough royalties. And then you as a franchisor are going to hate your life too. And who wants to do that? Like, life is too short for us to do stuff we hate,
I want to echo what you're saying, Marcos, because the elder care business does attract, if the franchisor isn't cautious, does attract people with a lot of warm and fuzzy. They're heart-oriented people. I want to make a difference. I want to contribute. I want to advise. I want to be an advocate. I want to help, right? And that's all well and good. And you may have a passion for that. But as you pointed out with the Amada model and many other models, it is a sales business. And if you're not comfortable with that, then it's not the right business for you. And then the other point you made is franchisors need to be clear about how they communicate their value package and who their ideal franchisee is. In this case, we're looking for a hunter, right? Someone that is fearless and can walk into the place unknown, have conversations with the right people, and walk out having done the deal, right? So that's a very particular type of entrepreneur. Now, I know you and Amada Senior Care have been very successful at this. In fact, you've won some awards for funnel creation and niche marketing and all of that kind of stuff. Are there, give us an idea how we can go fishing, not just in the right pond, but for the right fish with the right equipment. Talk more about that, how franchisors can do a better job.
Yeah, well, to take that analogy, we were talking about this earlier, that I think franchising is a lot like the fishing industry, or at least it should be. Because, and it's so funny because I say this and I know nothing about the fishing industry, but I imagine that in fishing, there are boats that only go out and fish for salmon. And they have the right lures. They know not only they have the right equipment, but they know what temperature the water used to be, how the depth the fish are in, where they are they, I don't know, spawning or not, or whatever you need to know about fish, right? And that outfit that fishes for salmon is only going to be successful if they are the very best at hunting for salmon. You take that same team and you have them go hunt for shrimp, and they'll come back with empty nets. They have no clue. They don't even know the first thing about getting shrimp to go into their net. And I think that's the same thing, should be the same thing with franchising, right? We ought to be specialists at who we're trying to attract in our nets. And so franchisors, we are the fishermen. People looking for franchises are the fish. And in fact, if Jesus can use that analogy, so can we, right? It's not that we're saying that people looking for franchises are idiots and a bunch of fish. No, like we are fishers of men, right? We want people to come into our nets because we want to change their lives. If we were just selling steak knives and whatever, then who cares, right? Just put anybody in the net, right? But no, that's not what we're doing here. We're actually doing something that potentially could change somebody's life. So we better know who we're going after. And so I think what a lot of franchisors want to talk about is about the equipment. They want to talk about what net should I use? Well, what bait and what type of boat? And that translates to, well, should I be on Facebook or should I be on Instagram? And if I'm on Instagram, how do I do Instagram? And I want to do LinkedIn. How do I do LinkedIn? Well, how do I get more leads from brokers? Or how do I get more leads from franchise shows? And the problem is you're asking the wrong question, because that's all the equipment that we use to attract somebody. What I think we don't talk enough about is, who the heck do you want? Do you want tuna, salmon, shrimp, or lobster? Mm-hmm. Meaning, are you looking for somebody who's been in their career for 30 years, who is now 50, who's been in sales, who is passionate about fitness? Or are you looking for a female who's now in their 20s who loves pop culture? Mm-hmm. And I think and it can be deeper than that, but I think if you do that first, then the equipment becomes more evident. Mm-hmm. Right? Then it's, well, you should be on LinkedIn. Or, well, no, you should work with that one broker, because that one broker franchise broker specializes in veterans, right? Because I hear now a lot of franchise brokers are starting to more specialize in who they help. And Rebecca, truth is that you've been an amazing mentor to me for these 15 years. And I've learned so much from you and Zoracle that And you've been screaming this from the rooftops that we should be an industry much akin to the fishing industry than we are to what we are today. Today, I feel like we just go out there and just throw our nets out, and we're just happy there's a fish in there. We don't care if it's a lobster or a tuna or a salmon or if it's a guppy. Like, we're just like, dude, I got a fish, and I'm gonna sell that guy a franchise, you know? And it's so unfortunate that that we've kind of gone that way.
It's the difference between short-term and long-term success, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can sell a franchise, but do you want to sell it to someone who's going to leverage your systems and who's going to be with you for the long haul, for years, and maybe even tell their friends what a great, opportunity this was. Maybe you should check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you talked about longevity, right? I think now what's funny is even though I say all that, we all know that there are wonderful companies out there that have done that have just sold their franchise to all walks of life, and they've adapted their system to support people from all walks of life. So I'm not convinced that this is the only way to do it, right? I mean, sure, it's okay for you to build a franchise that way, and you might have a system where everyone can win. That's great if everybody can win in your system and you can support them all. But I think that speed to market seems to make sense, that if you attract a certain type of entrepreneur and you're good at empowering and enabling that entrepreneur, that they are going to be successful faster, your brand is going to grow faster, and you'll get to your goal of, you want to sell the company or be a household name and leave a legacy, whatever you want to do, that will happen potentially faster than if you just grow and sell your franchise to anybody. So but I also understand that a lot of franchisors need to bring leads in, right? You got to sell. And so my pitch, I guess, is just spend at least some of your budget and some of your time trying to attract the right entrepreneur. Maybe at least half of your brand has the entrepreneur that you are really looking for, that could be a good thing.
I totally agree. Again, having been in the franchise space 30 years and watched this from a psychographic perspective, it's a big deal. The cost of acquisition of a good franchisee is very high. So applying ourselves to attracting the right one is important. And then, like you mentioned, having the systems in place that support that individual, it ultimately will become the culture. It will become who you are and how you are identified out in that marketplace. So
Yeah.
You're screaming like I've been screaming for the last few years. Yeah.
And I got to tell you that and this is not just a Zoracle plug. Like, Rebecca did not pay me to say this, but I'll tell you that what's interesting is so we get all these leads of people that are former or who are now selling for Merck, Pfizer, Abbott, Stryker, and we have them take the Zoracle. And what's cool is it's not that there's a type of, because in Zoracle you get a really cool thing that says they are an achiever, belonger, right? Or they're a societal, and so you get to know who they are. And what we've learned is not so much that person should not buy a franchise from us, but it tells us what their path is going to be with us. Mm-hmm. We know that if you're a thinker, and this is what's cool, the data shows us that the thinkers are going to reach their revenue slower than the one that's the achiever director, right? The person that's just going to go do, right? They're just going to pound the pavement and get it done. However, the guy or girl that's the pound the pavement, their operations are going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. And so we know that we're going to have to make sure that we support them operationally. The thinker, we know that they're going to operate really well, but they're going to have a hard time going out to sell. And so I think but it would have been really hard for us to do that if our franchisees were all from all walks of life, right? Mm-hmm. We know they can sell. We just know that they need to be supported in different ways. And so it's been invaluable for us to have that insight into that very specific audience, and be able to help them as they grow.
Oh, I love that. I love that because the thinkers are the ones who are putting the steps together behind the scenes. So it may take them longer to get there, and they're not as, they're more like the analyzers, right? And they're building slowly. But I love that you know how to support them. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then they grow huge businesses.
We do.
Right?
They got the foundation.
Yeah, they got these great foundations and they have these rough first years. And then year 2 and 3, you just see them just skyrocket, right? While some of the other folks, they grow like rockets, and then they have rough second years because they're trying to figure out the operational side, right? So it's really interesting how those profiles have really helped us understand that. And by the way, we're going to the honesty side. We actually go over that with them before they buy the franchise. We say, by the way, you're a more of a thinker, so here's what we see. You may very well have a tough first year, and here's what we want to tell you is you got to stay out there selling, right? And so we already coach them from the beginning so that when they acquire the business and we speak those terms to them, they know, okay, yeah, you're right, yeah, I remember that, right? We try to coach them that way. So yeah, it's been super valuable.
Amazing.
So Marcos, when you look at hindsight, the businesses you've built over your very young life, what are some takeaways or some moments, defining moments that you say that really changed my way of thinking or the way I do business, or that caused this aha epiphany or pain point, which allowed me then to grow or look at the world different? Is there any kind of defining moment or individual in your life that you go, had that not happened? You talked about your dad, but I'm talking about you in particular. Was there any defining moments in business for you?
Maybe what comes to mind is just the passing of time. And what I mean is, I don't know, Rebecca, I remember this is 7 years ago, right? We'd sit down and all these schemes and things that I wanted to start, and Zoracle was younger then, and I think with the ADHD that I have and a lot of entrepreneurs have, they focus on that year and how hard that year is, and they can't see what's going to happen 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you make rash decisions that alter the course of your life because of what's right in front of you and not what's going to happen 10 years from now. And it's the idea that everything is going to take longer than you ever think, and it's going to cost more than you ever think. Like whatever business plan you've put together, and this is for franchisors, franchisees, entrepreneurs, whatever, just tack on another 5 years to your business plan, right? Whatever you think you can do in 5, it's probably going to be 10. But if you can stick it out and stay on that path and consistently keep doing the activities that are going to make you successful. They're not glamorous. They're not rocket surgery usually. Like it's not, you have to keep doing this one dumb activity for a very long time. And if you do that over and over and over again, you all of a sudden have $100 million company, or the freedom you want, or money in the bank, whatever that goal was, or time with your kids. But that consistency and that time is so elusive when you're first starting.
Yeah.
No, you want it to happen now. You want things to change right then, and they're not going to. And it's kind of a bummer, right? It's like I wish. It's a bummer, right? It sucks. So those 10 years that you're going to be trying to build something are going to be awful.
They're going to be awful. A lot of what you're describing, the ability to delay gratification, the consistency, the tenacity, the adaptability to stay self-disciplined, all of these things, by the way, are also attributes of someone with grit and someone who does great at sales. Like what you were talking about with Amada Senior Care. But they are universally necessary if you're going to run a business, if you're going to be an entrepreneur. If a shiny object distracts you and you're off in that direction, and then you're off in this direction, and you're off in the other direction, it only slows down the progress of what really is the right business.
Yeah.
So, I've seen many people do it. I'd rather be the tortoise, that keeps going and build something than a rabbit that goes this way and a rabbit that goes that way and comes back and goes, oh shoot, I got to start over. I got to start over. Right.
Yeah. We have a franchisee that does $10 million a year in revenues right now. 10 million a year. His name is Ken Jensen. And now I've just realized I will not be able to send this video to any prospects. Because I just said that. But I think it's in the FTD. Anyway, so $10 million a year. And Ken, when he acquired the franchise in 2012, he was one of these guys that doesn't overthink anything, and he's extremely consistent. He said, you tell me how many sales calls I have to do a day, and I will do them.
Sure.
And I will do them forever. And we said, oh, sure, Ken. Nobody is that consistent. And he acquired his business in 2012. And still today, he goes out and does sales calls every single day. And he's $10 million a year in revenues. Like, he's crazy. He, like, the other day, he said, oh, I joined this gym, Orange Theory. I joined Orange Theory. And I said to the guy, I said, okay, well, I'll be here every day. He kind of talks like that. He's a really happy guy. He said, I'll be here every day. And the guy says, well, nobody comes every day, Mr. Jensen. He goes, oh, no, I will. I'll come every day. He has gone to Orange Theory every day. Every day. He is the most consistent guy. So it's not rocket surgery, right? He is just consistent. And even when things were rough and things were hard, he was never detracted from it. Like, I don't have that ability. I'm a mess, right? Hard times are not good for me. But consistency, right? And I think that's the one thing I've ever gotten out of this. I'll be 46, and the only thing I've ever, I think, really thought was important in this life is consistency. If you can do something consistently long enough, you'll be successful.
Yep.
I think.
Yep. Tipping point. Boom. Guys, we're at the top of the hour. Marcos, we could talk forever, especially of this particular topic. I want to thank you for joining us. Any final words for our listeners from you, Marcos? And then Tracy, I want some final words from you because your eyeballs are this big. Like, I want to say something. Marcos, any final words?
No final words other than my deep appreciation. Tracy, I don't know you as well, but Rebecca, I absolutely love you, and I think the world of you. That's it.
And I love
You know what? That makes two of us. She's the best.
So, what are your final thoughts on Marcos?
First of all, I'm just dying to see Marcos's spot on profile.
I know.
I'm just dying. I'll bet you anything that you have a very high degree of emotional intelligence, because I feel like there was like that just kind of permeated as you were talking about partnerships and just like setting realistic expectations. And I think that only somebody with high emotional intelligence really gets that early on and is able to implement that. Plus, just the whole idea of really going for this one specific type of fish, whether it's going to be a whale or a shrimp, you just know your fish and you plug into that and gear that messaging towards that fish. And then the marketing platforms follow. So I think that was brilliant. I think that everybody should just like hone in on that when you're listening to this episode, and just obrigado for being here.
That's some good Portuguese there. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks again, Marcos. And thanks to the rest of you that are listening in to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. We'll see you next week on another episode.